Week 6, Chapter 5, Part 2. Degree of operating leverage is a reflection of the extent fixed assets and fixed costs are utilized in a business firm. The employment of operating leverage causes operating profit to be more sensitive to changes in sales. The use of operating leverage increases the potential return, but it also increases potential losses. The amount of leverage employed depends on anticipated economic conditions, nature of the business, cyclical or non-cyclical, and the risk aversion of management. The sensitivity of a firm's operating profit to a change in sales as a result of the employment of operating leverage is reflected in its degree of operating leverage. And the degree of operating leverage is defined as the ratio of percentage change in operating income in response to percentage change in volume. The degree of operating leverage may also be computed using a formula. And we see the formula on slide 15. Here we see a graphic of degree of operating income or loss. Degree of leverage can easily be computed from the summary data on the leveraged and conservative firm. Summary data is presented in your text in Table 5-4 and are drawn from Tables 5-2 and Tables 5-3. Here we see an algebraic formula for degree of leverage for your review. There are limitations of analysis. The normal assumption in doing break-even analysis is that a linear function exists for revenue and costs as volume changes. This is probably reasonable over a relevant range. However, for more extreme levels of operations, some non-linearity may exist, resulting in revenue weakness and cost overruns. Here is a slide for your review. And again, I'd like you to look for, what makes sense to you and any questions that you might have. And it's showing nonlinear break-even analysis. Financial leverage is the measure of the amount of debt used in the capital structure of the firm, while operating leverage primarily pertains to the left-hand side of the balance sheet, assets and associated costs. Financial leverage deals with the right-hand side of the balance sheet, liabilities and net worth. Of course, there is impact on earnings. Two firms may have the same operating income, but greatly different net incomes due to the magnification effect of financial leverage. The higher the financial leverage, the greater the profits or losses at high or low levels of operating profit, respectively. Financial leverage is beneficial only if the firm can employ the borrowed funds to earn a higher rate of return than the interest rate on the borrowed amount. The extent of a firm's use of financial leverage may be measured by computing its degree of financial leverage, also known as DFL. The degree of financial leverage is the ratio of the percentage change in earnings per share in response to a percentage change in EBIT. The DFL may also be computed utilizing a formula. Let's see if I can find the slide on that. I thought we were there. Here we go. Here's a schematic of the financing plans and earnings per share. And here we see the degree of financial leverage formula written out for you. The DFL is associated with a specific level of earnings before income and taxes and changes as EBIT changes. The purposes of employing financial leverage is to increase return to the owners, but its use also increases their risk, which brings us to some limitations to the use of financial leverage. As the firm becomes more highly leveraged and creditors take on more risk, they will demand higher interest rates that countermand the benefits of financial leverage. As the risk to the stockholder increases with leverage, their required rate of return increases and stock prices may decline. On this slide, we're discussing combining operating and financial leverage. Combining operating and financial leverage provides maximum magnification of returns. It also magnifies the risk. The combined leverage effect can be illustrated through the income statement. Here is a view of the combined leverage influence on the income statement. It's good to note that operating income is the end result of operating leverage and the beginning factor for financial leverage in the form of earnings before interest and taxes. These relationships are further enforced through figure 5-5 in your text. Here we have a slide of operating and financial leverage for your review. The degree of combined leverage, DCL, is a measure of the effect on net income as a result of a change in sales. The DCL is computed similar to the DOL or DFL, and its DCL equals percentage of change in earnings per share divided by percentage of change in sales. The DCL may also be computed, and I'm looking for this slide with the algebraic equation. Here it is here. Sorry for that pause. In an algebraic way. So I'd like to reinforce at this point the interactive nature of the various forms of leverage. Many firms take the Japanese economy, which the text talked about, uses both high operating and financial leverages. Because of their high combined leverage, they are hesitant to lose volume and therefore are extremely competitive in pricing. In the text in Finance in Action, a section called Why Japanese Firms Tend to Be So Competitive, Perspective 5-6 highlights the impact of high combined leverage on the competitive behavior of Japanese firms presented in this Finance in Action box. We may wish to focus on the difference between the U.S. and Japanese financial markets and how the Japanese markets make high financial leverage more attainable than that possible for U.S. firms. And also in Finance in Action to do with Intel Corporation, titled Leverage in the Real World. The Intel Corporation example attempts to drive home the point that leverage changes from one financial reporting period to the next. Both operational and financial leverage are dependent on the level of sales and the amount of debt, as well as the interest expense, which impacts net income. In the Intel example, all the degrees of leverage go down as sales increase. 23.8%, and operating income goes up 14.4%. In fact, it is the degree of combined leverage of 6.87 times that boosts operating income, net income, and earnings per share in the second period. I know that students often think of degree of leverage as a static number, but this Finance in Action box should demonstrate to you that it's not. This wraps up week 6 and chapter 5. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and see you in next unit.